enduring long enough to get noticed. Now, if there's one thing that's going to separate you from everyone else, is that you stay longer in the game than everyone else. It's enduring longer, it's showing up when you're probably not making any progress, showing up probably when you have no blog readers, maybe no subscribers, no video views, and all those different things, but staying in the game long enough to get noticed. Now, for a lot of authors and probably bloggers, they were relying on a small amount of content to get noticed. It makes me laugh sometimes when I see some bloggers say, you really need to concentrate on that article, make it the best article you can, make sure you put as much useful content into it, and spend a couple of days working on that article. And then at the end of the day, that is one article out of all the vast content that's out there on the web. And for somebody to think that they can retire on one article, they're sadly mistaken. Again, it's like the authors who only release one Kindle book in the Amazon Kindle store and expect that is going to be the one that is going to mean that they're going to get noticed, that is going to be the one that they're going to retire on, and unfortunately are sadly deluded. As Seth Godin says, you need to endure long enough to get noticed. So that means showing up regularly, that means putting content out on a regular basis, even no one is noticing it, and you will find over time that people will start to notice you. Now, at the moment, if you've been following these podcast episodes, you're probably well aware that my goal was to record 2 podcast episodes a day, or record 2 videos and then have them as a video on YouTube and also have them as a podcast episode. And what I was going to do is I was going to try to spend 1 full year recording these videos. So by the end of it, 365 by 2, that is a lot of content on the web. Now, unfortunately, I've fallen a little bit behind, but I've showed up on most days. Now, yesterday I was loading my episodes up on Anchor.fm. Now, if you are looking to create a podcast, or are looking for somewhere maybe to get started on, I highly recommend you go to Anchor. It's very, very easy to use, and it's free to upload your content. Some podcast hosts charge you a monthly fee for hosting your podcast. Now, they'll give you all different tools and all those different things, but in the beginning you don't really need them at all. So that's why I recommend you go over to Anchor.fm, load all your content up there and get started. Now, yesterday I think I uploaded 20 or 30 podcast episodes this past 2 days, which is a lot of content. If you compare, probably the odd podcast might release maybe 1 episode per week, or maybe 1 a month or whatever. That's a lot of content going out there. Now, these podcast episodes, as you probably are well aware, these episodes are only probably 5, maybe 10, maybe 15 minutes long, so they're not actually that long. But it's better to have a ton of small content out there rather than, a kind of handful of lengthy pieces. So, as I said, I had put up 20 or 30 podcast episodes. I forget the number, what it was. And at the moment, I think I probably have put up about 120 videos and 120 podcast episodes. Now, it may be even more at this stage, but so far I have put that up. Now, again, if you think that is 120 videos out there on YouTube, that's 124 podcast episodes on different topics that are floating around the web, there is a good chance I'm going to get noticed by somebody. Now, I actually did notice that actually 2 days ago, Anchor got on to me and said that I was actually getting enough listeners on the podcast that it was time, if I wanted to have a sponsor on the podcast. Now, again, I know from the people who are listening to this podcast episode, I'm not going to retire on the small number who are listening at the moment, but it is a nice kind of motivation to think that I'm going in the right direction. And when I did look at the stats of this podcast episode, it was kind of up and down, very small along the baseline. If it was somebody who was probably on a heart machine, you'd probably say, well, his hours are numbered, he's not going to last too long, because it was just kind of skipping along the bottom line of the graph. But there, a couple of days ago, because I had released so many episodes out there and I did a little bit of promotion for them, that graph just took off and went straight up. I think in fact I had 100 listeners or something on one day. So many people had downloaded the episodes. Now, for me to think that I could, release maybe 5-10 podcast episodes and expect to get noticed is unfortunately, sadly deluded, because there's so much content coming on the web every day. There's so many people writing articles, making podcasts, blogging, all those different things. So there's tons and tons of content coming on the web every day, and for you to think you can throw a handful of a few pieces of content out there and get noticed, as I said, you are sadly deluded. It's not going to happen. Now, you will find, as I've mentioned in other podcast episodes, you will find a lot of people will drop out along the way. Anyone looking at my graph this past couple of months would probably say to themselves, well, what is the point of bothering even doing these, because nobody is listening to it. Look at the graph, it's just kind of skipping along on the end line or the kind of bottom line of the graph. We're not making any progress. And as I said, those are the times when most people drop out. So you will find that the majority of people will drop out long before the race has even started, and they never ever reach the finish line. So as Seth Godin says, by enduring and creating a lot of content, you will get noticed, but it also means that you're separating yourself from the crowd. Now, if I go to iTunes, I'm sure there's not many podcasts that probably have 100 episodes in them. And in fact, Seth Godin said if he was ever called to do an interview for a podcast, it didn't matter how big, how small it was, he would be willing to give his services to promote himself and his books and all those different things. But he'd be willing to go on to any podcast. But the one condition he had, he wouldn't go on a podcast that had less than 100 episodes. Now, you probably, when you think about somebody who has released 100 episodes, it means that they are in the game long term. It means they are somebody who is committed, somebody who is showing up regularly, and that is the type of person he wants to have his content on, because he knows that is probably the type of person that will continue to grow their number, who will get his name and his books in front of more people, and because of that he'll build a bigger name for himself and a bigger audience, and that's because they are committed. So circling back again, are you enduring long enough to be noticed? Are you just putting a couple of pieces of content out there, on the odd second, third or fourth day, not showing up regularly? Or are you kind of putting all your heart and soul into one video, one article, one blog post or one book and expecting that to be the one piece that is going to get you noticed? I'm here to tell you that that is not. The more times people come upon your name, or the more kind of nets you have thrown out in the internet, the more people you can gather. If you imagine going to a lake today with just a fishing rod and just fishing with a fishing rod at the end of the pond or the lake, how many fish would you catch? Not that many. You might find maybe the majority of fish are actually deep in the lake rather than swimming around the edges. You might find the odd one swimming around the edge, but if you had maybe a boat, or if you had a couple of nets and you toss them out in the lake and let them drift off, let them find their own place on the internet, or the lake in this case, you will find that you'll catch more fish. You'll get more people showing up in those nets. So get your nets out there. Forget about fishing with one fishing pole. Get as much content out there as possible. And as I said, endure long enough to get noticed, because the majority of people, your competition, all the people who you are, side by side with at the moment, you will be surprised to find that a lot of them will probably shift the focus onto something else, maybe drop out, and by the time you actually make a name for yourself, they will be far, far behind you, probably because they've got distracted, probably because they have gone off on some bright shiny object or some kind of new business opportunity or something like that, and they have got completely lost, and they're kind of skipping from one thing to the other, never making any progress, and because of that they never get anywhere. So stick to what you're doing, show up regularly, create as much content as possible, even one piece of content per day. As I said, I am trying to do 2 episodes a day of these videos, so hopefully, again, I'm not going to make my 720 episode in a year from now, but we're going to be well on the way. As I said, I've already got 120 episodes up so far in the podcast I've done through these videos, so it's going to be far, far more by then. So as always, reach out, forget the fishing line, get the fishing net out there and try and get yourself in front of as many people as possible, and you'll be guaranteed you'll do far, far better, and people will notice you because it's easy to find you on the web. So as always, if you'd like to find my content on the web, go over to WriteCome, that's WriteCome.com, or again use the WriteCome search term on Google, iTunes, Yahoo, wherever you are looking for your content, wherever you hang out on, do a search for WriteCome and you'll find my content all over the web. And as always, if you go over to the WriteCome site right now, we have a great free report which is called Words to Wealth, and in it I'm going to show you 10 different ways you can make money from home with your keyboard. So if you'd like to try that out, if you'd like to see what you can do with your keyboard from home, head over to WriteCome, download the free report, and as always, have a great day. Thank you. Bye bye.